Hello, viewers. Welcome to GBV Conversation right here at the Feyrep Studios in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State. Today, we're going to be talking about the role of our communities in bringing an end to gender-based violence and, of course, increasing cases of human trafficking. So come with me as we get into the studios to have this conversation together. Okay, so while it is important to do a narrative around what the role of the communities or our communities should be in preventing gender-based violence and in supporting the fight against human trafficking, it's important to state from the beginning that these are two different situations, even though they are interwoven, even though they are intertwined. Sometimes while you're trafficking human beings, you're stepping violence against human is actually carried out. And then sometimes when you're also involved in gender-based violence, of course, cases of trafficking also come along. But it's important that we separate, while we're attempting to separate the two, that we speak specifically to the question you just asked me today, the role of communities. Our communities can do a lot. Not too long ago, I wrote an article, and I suspect that it's on the basis of this article that you actually came up with these concerns, this issue as a subject of discussion today. I wrote an article, and I titled that article, Are Our Communities Sheltering Perpetrators? Are rural communities sheltering perpetrators? And the whole idea that I tried to explain in that article is that while the searchlights by agencies like Feyrep and her partners, agencies like NAPTIP, agencies like UNODC, and the rest of all of these agencies, IOM, and all of them are beaming their searchlights in the urban centers. A lot of perpetrators are running away from the urban centers and going to rural communities. Now, if they are beginning to find shelter in the rural communities, then it's going to become a problem. And as a matter of fact, that is one of the reasons why they are even, if you check the list of people who are being trafficked, or if you checked the highest rate of gender-based violence, you will realize in the recent months that the prevalence is more in rural communities. Now, in scenarios like that, in such a situation, the communities have a lot of role to play. And so I would like to just, from your question, let me just state a few things the community can do. Number one thing that the communities can do is that the communities can join in creating awareness. Communities have town hall meetings, communities have age grades, communities have youth associations, communities have women associations, market women associations, communities have a lot of these groups. And from time to time, they get to meet to have all manner of conversations when they meet. We believe at Feyrep that when they meet at these conversations, that one of the things they can do that will help to promote awareness and then, of course, increase the fight against gender-based violence and human trafficking is that this conversation must be a part of the ingredient of every conversation that the communities will be involved in from time to time, whether interventionists like us are there, whether organizations like Feyrep are present or not present, whether government agencies are present or not present. The communities need to begin to spend a lot of their time, the time they are using to eat pepper soup, eat isiewu, and eat and dance and, raise the rural flags and all of that. If they spend 20-30% of that time creating awareness and holding conversations around gender-based violence and telling men that, look, they abuse on their wives, and telling women that they abuse on their husbands, and telling parents that they abuse on their children, that all of that will come with consequences. If they spend a lot of time talking about these issues, I guarantee you that the fight against gender-based violence and the fight to end modern-day slavery, human trafficking, will reduce drastically. Now, the second thing that communities will also do is to try to open their doors and stop seeing law enforcement agencies as enemies, as people who are just going to come here to come and arrest people, just come here. They need to begin to see the law enforcement. Now, I mean, today we are not here to talk about the role of the police, but maybe when we have the time, we're going to get to talk about that. But communities need to be more receptive in working with law enforcement agencies, the police, NAPTI, National Drug Law Enforcement Agency. Our communities need to open up their doors to working with these agencies. If they are able to open up their doors to working with these agencies, like the police would say, the police is your friend. If we can actually open up and be the friends to these agencies, I guarantee you that relationship would help a lot in moving forward in this fight of preventing gender-based violence and ending modern-day slavery, which is human trafficking. The third thing the communities should do is that the communities need to increase their approach to reporting. The communities must begin to report. Now, reporting means that every time you notice, like I think it's a slogan of the police, when you see something, you say something. I don't know if it's police or NAPTIP. One of them who owns that slogan. When you see something, you say something. So, like I said, we'll come back here to talk about them. So on the day we have the time to talk about the law enforcement agencies, we will get to talk about this, their slogans of when you see something and you say something. But for today, it is the communities. We need the communities to make it a responsibility to report the presence of unfamiliar people. A lot of unfamiliar people. Can you imagine that right where we are, that there are people who walked into some communities, identified themselves as refugees. The communities accepted them because they had, now, I mean, our people are soft-spotted people, are very friendly and loving people. So people come to you and say, oh, there is war in Cameroon. And so we just came here to come and hide. And you see men or you see women, and they just come to your community. You give them space. You allow them rent homes, and they stay there. And then from time to time, they begin to interact with the young girls, especially the ones who are leaving secondary school. They begin to interact. Now, before you know what is happening, these guys are, by the time you begin to find out, these people are actually not refugees from anywhere. They are actually perpetrators looking for where to hide and an opportunity to commit worse crimes. So we believe that, at Feyrep, we believe that every stranger in your community, every stranger, anybody that comes strangely into your community without anything that connects them to you, that the law enforcement agencies must be notified. They should know that you have strangers in your community and that whatever they've come there to do, the police should be aware of it. So these are a few things I think that the community should be able to do, but the most important of them is that the community must take responsibility in the place of creating awareness amongst her own people, amongst the young people who are leaving school, amongst the women in the communities, amongst the young men. And the community must create awareness and let people know that not every promise of a foreign job, not every promise of a job overseas is actually as true as it is. That not every promise of, oh, I can go and I will take you to Italy and I will train you, is not as true as it is. Not all of these promises are as true as they really are. Okay, so let me answer that question, even though in my first response, I've actually had a touch on this particular question that borders around enforcement. But like I said earlier on, yes, you're very right about that question when you say enforcement is the primary responsibility of the security agencies. You're absolutely correct. But the communities can do a lot. And like I mentioned earlier, the communities should open up their doors and stop seeing enforcement agencies as enemies of the community. They need to begin to see them as friends of the community. They need to begin to see them as partners in pursuing a common goal, as people with whom we can achieve the objective of keeping our communities, especially our young people, safe. Now, there's a particular kind of human trafficking that is very sickening. Baby factories. Now, do you know that most of the times, it is whistleblowers from communities. It's people from communities who take responsibility to report to the law enforcement agencies, that someone is doing a particular practice that they really do not understand. And that's how the police is able to bust some of these factories and dismantle these cartels. So I believe that, like I said earlier on, the communities need to begin to see this as part of their responsibility. Now, in health and safety, let me say something to you, my dear brother Tim. In health and safety, they say safety is everyone's business. So even when you have a safety officer on a construction site, you must take responsibility of your safety. Look, if we have more community people opening up their eyes to people who come to say, oh, we are providing international education, we are providing foreign jobs, we are providing this and providing that. If the communities open their eyes and insist and say, are you registered with the police? Are you registered with the SSS? Are you registered with the DSS? If the communities pay attention to that, if they begin to ask those kind of questions and say, show us evidence, and then say, okay, hold on, these children will not leave, this girl will not leave for that school, yet even though you say you've gotten the admission, even though you say it's going to be free, but this child will not leave. And parents, so when this awareness goes in and parents say, okay, so person came to take my child, and they say the child is to go and do so activities in so location. But please hold on. Let me speak to the Community Security Council. Let the Community Security Council speak to the police, and then the police speak to the DSS. Let's check. Let's do a security check on this individual before our children go out. If communities begin to do this, without just taking, because someone came to give you 20,000, 50,000, or 100,000, without falling for those traps, then trafficking will reduce drastically. So yes, the community has a very important role to play as we continue in this fight. Yes, and yes, 1,000 times yes. The role of the school in curbing gender-based violence and human trafficking can never be overstressed, can never be overemphasized. Now, let's take it from here. These young lads go to school. From JSS 1, let's take the secondary school, for example, from JSS 1 to SS 3. And in these 6 years of their stay in secondary school, there is a lot of conversation around, am I going to school in Nigeria or am I going to school overseas? Some children, their parents are already having them to write exams in some universities. Some parents already start making arrangements for their kids. In Nigeria, for example, I know parents who start making arrangements for kids to go study in countries like Ghana while the kids are even still in their secondary school. They are not done, they've not even written their SSCE examination. So the schools need to also learn to take responsibility. Now, whatever Feyrep is doing, there is need for that complementary role, from that back-end complementary role. For example, from time to time, Feyrep goes to these schools to create awareness about gender-based violence, to create awareness around issues that relate to the girl child and all of that. Now, also, we have activities around, interventions that connects to the boy child and all of that put together. But the school needs to have, as part of this in-school conversation, the conversation that goes on inside of the school. Teachers need to begin to talk about signs, things that point to the fact that this person is a trafficker, things that enable the young people to identify a potential trafficker. Those kind of signs. The schools need to begin to talk about trafficking. They need to begin to tell young people that not every opportunity in Europe is actually an opportunity for a better life. Some of them are opportunity to continue the slavery of the black race. So all of this is in the school. Now, as we speak, There is no curriculum anywhere. Okay, maybe except for some colleges of education that I hear in recent times have started training teachers in training on how to understand signs of trafficking and how they can have it built into their classroom work. But you can't find a curriculum right now in Nigeria that emphasizes a training around human trafficking. It's not there. So the schools have a role to play. Now, while government has that role for the public schools, the private schools also have a great responsibility, a huge responsibility in their hands to emphasize, to begin to talk about issues around trafficking. They have service, what is it called? They have General Assembly days. So even if you don't want to have them as part of a classroom conversation by a social studies teachers, or a home economics teachers, or any of those courses. When we come for assembly in the morning, for schools that hold assembly every morning, for schools that hold assembly just Monday in the beginning of the week, and then they have the last assembly as the school closes, part of whatever conversation that goes on during this assembly should include a component, should have some ingredients of things around human trafficking. And that's the message Feyrep is also passing out. That schools need to begin to talk about human trafficking. Schools need to begin to talk about gender-based violence. Schools need to begin to talk about child abuse. Schools need to begin to talk about child trafficking. Schools need to begin to talk about all of these things put together. If the schools take responsibility, whether you like it or not, the more the conversation happens in the school environment, there will be a spillover of that conversation. So from school to community, and then I'm sure when we also have the churches having this also as part of their own conversation, that there will be that balance, and of course we'll be able to wipe out human trafficking and gender-based, and bring an end to gender-based violence in our communities. Okay, so thank you for staying tuned with us today. We're hoping that you'll continue to join us in our subsequent editions. We also would like to welcome your observations, your contributions, and of course, your support as we continue this work right here at Feyrep, and as our partners also continue to work with us. Please, before you leave, do well to like, share, and subscribe on this channel. Thank you. Until next time, bye-bye.